Okay, let's start. So, I'm going to talk to you guys about HTML5 apps. I'm going to assume that everybody here knows roughly what HTML5 is. Anyone not know? Okay, good. So, who am I? I'm Roy Sutton. I'm a developer relations engineer with HP. I work in the Open Web OS and Enyo.js projects. You can find me on Twitter at @Priya101. I've been doing mobile development for probably longer than the term mobile development has been around. So it's been kind of exciting to see where things have gone. Now, today we're going to do app development with JavaScript, which, 5 years ago people would have said JavaScript for writing apps. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, what is Enyo? Enyo is a cross-platform JavaScript framework that's designed from the ground up for apps. It's not for creating web pages, it's for making apps. It targets mobile and desktop browsers, and it is free. Open source, Apache 2.0. All the development takes place out in the open on GitHub. I don't know about all the development. Some work in process stuff. We're just not quite out in public yet, but will be soon. We invite the community to participate in the development. So that's what it is. But why? Why would you want to use Enyo for cross-platform app development? Well, probably the number one reason is that we've done the hard work of making sure that your app will work properly on whatever target platform you decide to go for. At least as long as it's one of our tier 1 platforms, we promise you that it'll work. Enyo came from the HP Touchpad. It was the application development framework that we used for creating the 1,000 or so apps that we had at launch time with the touchpad. When the touchpad sadly went away, we decided to take the framework and take it from it was WebKit primarily, and we decided we're going to re-architect it so it works on all the modern browsers, all the mobile browsers, and so that's what we did. We took this framework, which was designed for making native-like apps, and made it available for all these different browsers. What are the features of it? There's a strong object-oriented approach to programming that we enable with Enyo. And the other thing that we bring is the professionally designed widget set that we used. The touchpad got very high marks for the user interface, and those designers created a professional widget set, which I'll show off in a little bit. The next thing about why you should consider Enyo is that we have a very strong focus on the community. As I said, everything is on GitHub. We have forums, we have IRC, we have a community gallery where users submit their own creations so that you can reuse those in your apps. It's very much like the jQuery model, where you can go download, I need a charting piece to put into my app. Well, go to the gallery and download something. And as a developer, my favorite feature is that because it works the same on mobile and desktop, I can do all of my development in Chrome, for example, and use the developer tools that are in Chrome. So I can debug, I can look at the DOM, I can set breakpoints. It makes it very easy for development. I'm going to talk a little bit about the object-oriented features of Enyo. I said it's object-oriented. You could say that, JavaScript's prototypal and inherent model gives you object-oriented features already. Well, Enyo tries to expand upon this a little bit. And one of the ways that we do that is through something called kinds. And we call them objects or classes, but class is a reserved word. So we have kinds, and these kinds help us through properties and events to have very strong encapsulation. So what I'd like to do is kind of talk about what does that mean exactly. And so to do that, I'm going to talk about an app. An app has pieces, and they're nested within each other. And it's very logical to think about your app as okay, I've got an app. It's got some text. It's got, maybe it's got a little dialogue in the middle there. It's got content inside of it. Well, in Enyo, to recreate that, we have something like this. We have an Enyo kind, which is the app. It has components within it. Those components are the text, and there's a group box. The group box has a header and content inside of it. So we build up our app out of these pieces here. That seems all well and good, but how does the app interact with these pieces, and how do the pieces interact with the app? And that's where we get back into the properties and the events. And what I'm going to do is, it might be helpful to go show you just show you some samples here. And so what I've got is, let's see. So I've got an editor here, and what I'm going to do is show you what I think is the simplest Enyo app you can possibly have. All I've got here is I'm loading the Enyo core library, which is very small. It's I think it's somewhere around 30K gzipped, minified. And what I'm doing here is creating a new Enyo control with content, hello, Modev tablet from Enyo. It's not very exciting, but an Enyo control at its very core will render into the DOM as a div element. So if we were to launch this within the browser here, this is what you would get. It's not very exciting, and we can look at the page source here, and well, it's exactly what you saw before. But we can inspect the DOM, and we can take a look at that if we wanted to, and we can see that that it is in fact very simple. It's rendered out as a div control right here. Well, that's fine, but obviously if you're going to be writing an app, you're not going to embed it all into the embedded into the HTML. So you can place your kinds into JavaScript files. Here we've taken the same basic concept, but I've expanded a little bit. I've assigned a name to it. I've told it what kind I want it to be, and the kinds can be a number of different things. There are Enyo provides buttons and input boxes and a number of different things, and I'll talk about the widget set and the other things that it provides on top of that. And almost every kind has a content, which would be the text within it. On a button, it would be the label on the button. And as you can see, there we go. You might wonder why is some content in there twice, and the reason is that I have included that twice. So I've reused that control that I've made. I can reuse that as many times as I want to. Each one of those is independent. It has its own data, its own state, so we can reuse it. So what I'd like to do is show you where we can go from here by showing you some of the widget set and how we can reuse that. We've got a radio group here, and I've embedded that within the components section of my app here. And when I run this, there we go. You can now rate how well you like this presentation. I'm enjoying it very much. Pretty simple, but the encapsulation that I'm talking about starts to come into play here. I like that presentation, or that survey thing there. I want to extract this, and I want to be able to reuse this in my app. So what I can do is this part here with the components, here and the checkboxes, I want to extract that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it into a separate file. And it's going to look a little bit more complicated, but it gives me a chance to talk about those features that I was I had mentioned before. Here's that radio group and a checkbox, and here is the question that was being asked. It looks almost entirely the same as what we had before as component blocks. What I've added is a published property called the question, and I've added an event onChanged, and this allows me to communicate with whatever is going to hold this this kind. So the owner can use the published properties to set information into this kind, and we can use the events to communicate out to the controlling object. And so what we've done here is I've added a couple events here. There's an on-click handler that I've added, which calls the click function, which calls this function doChanged is related to onChanged here. So there's an onChanged event, and when I wish to call it, Enyo has created a function for me called doChanged that I can call to send the information up. And I have here a question changed. Published properties get getters and setters automatically. So question, we have a question changed. So if the parent changes the question, we get notified immediately, and we can change the content of the question. And I'm just going to go ahead and show that one off real quickly. What I've got here is here's my survey. I've reused my survey kind, and I've set my default question. I've done that twice. So I should have 3 because I reused the same same initial one, and then I've showed you how we can simplify the app by extracting that part there. Pretty simple. Now I'm going to show off a little bit about Enyo. So I'm going to show off the professionally designed widget set that I talked about, because this is one of the parts that I think really where Enyo really shines, is these controls that we've created to make it easy for you to create good-looking apps very easily. You're seeing here a number of different features shown off. One is the layout library with panels. You see the panels sliding in and out that allows us to display more information. This might be a smaller tablet size display. When it's on a larger display, the 2 panels would be side by side. I thought they would probably show up side by side on this display, but unfortunately they don't. Buttons, icon buttons, toggle buttons, check boxes. As you can see, it has a very sort of modern look to it, but it's not so strange that it would look out of place on various different tablets or in a desktop browser. Menus, tooltips, number of different things here, spinners. So we've tried to put all of the pieces in there that you would need in order to develop an app. I want to talk a little bit about the layout library. Let's do a basic sample. So we've got a number of different ways for grouping and containing content. Let's see. I want to do panels. Panels, I talked about, they're a very powerful way to group content onto a page, and that here we've got different panels where each one occupies the full screen, but by simply changing the arranger for the panel, we now have panels that slide in. We can go into a carousel where we have multiple panels simultaneously. We can have them where they collapse in. A number of different options available, even really strange things like a spiral arranger, where each one of the panels appears as part of a spiral of squares. One of the nice things, this is the sampler app, which is available on the Enyo.js website, and I wanted to show you one other thing about it that is very nice. Anytime you're viewing a sample, you can view the JavaScript. Usually, where's the JavaScript? Interesting. Well, that worked just a few minutes ago.
Are you looking for a wireless?
You know what? It may be trying to pull it down.
If you're on wireless, you do get disconnected from this wireless.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. Is it's pulling it in with a AJAX request, and it's not. I thought it would save. That's why I preloaded it so that if the wireless failed, but didn't take into account that wasn't going to work. And then the other thing that I talked about was the community, and I wanted to show off a little bit about that. Here's the community gallery, where people have submitted different kinds here. And I'm not going to show off the GitHub repository because obviously I can't get to it now. But there's a number of different things there. But let me go back to my presentation. So, well, we already covered this one already. The widget set, as I said, professionally designed, and we work. We have a QA team which verifies that for all of our Tier 1 platforms, all of the different widgets work flawlessly. And what do you do with your app once you make an app? Where can you take it? As I said, it's cross-platform for desktop and mobile, but how do you get it there? The way that we do it, or that we suggest you do it, is if you're going for a tablet, which is what this is all about, you can use PhoneGap to package it up into a native app that can be put into an app store, take advantage of the native features of the device, such as the camera. And I believe there's a talk later today where they talk a little bit more in depth about PhoneGap, so you may want to tune into that if you're interested in doing JavaScript applications. Certainly you can use a web browser, or, excuse me, a web server, or embed this into a web page. If you need to have some app content within a traditional web page, you can certainly use Enyo to have a self-contained app within a page. Very easy to make a Google Chrome app out of Enyo, or to use the Intel App Up encapsulator to make an installable desktop application. The supported platforms that I mentioned, they're Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and IE 8 and 9. We've done a lot of work to make sure that things work properly with IE 8. It can be a little tricky on these older browsers when you're dealing with things that use a lot of CSS transforms to get it to work, but we've done that work for you. On the mobile side, Android 4 stock browser and the 2.3 browser, the Kindle Fire, you can read that. We will be promoting the Chrome for Android browser into a Tier 1 as we move forward into the next version, now that people actually have access to that. And resources. These are the ones that I would have shown you here: the Enyo.js website, the GitHub repository, IRC, Twitter. And then later today, I believe at 3:30, Jeremy Thomas, a colleague of mine, will be doing a presentation on how to deploy cross-platform apps with Enyo. And that's 15 minutes, and it'll be in the Bijou Theater, and I certainly encourage you to take a look at that. Wow, I really powered through that. So I'm going to open that up to questions, because I'm sure people probably have questions about... Huh? Plenty of time. Yeah. So questions?
How does this relate to, for example, existing libraries like SensuTouch?
SensuTouch is probably the most similar framework out there to what Enyo is. I would say that the advantages of Enyo over SensuTouch are it came from mobile rather than from desktop. It has a more permissive license. The Apache 2.0 license means it's totally free for whatever use you want to put it to. I haven't done any benchmarks, but I find it faster to develop apps. I find the apps are more responsive. But they cover very much the same space. Enyo plays nicely with other frameworks such as Backbone for data. You can, if you want to, you can combine it with jQuery. Let's say there's a jQuery plugin you want. It's very easy to wrap that with Enyo so that you can have a jQuery plugin in the middle of your app. People have combined it with Angular and other frameworks as well. It's very flexible. I'd say that, and the code base is very small, so it's very easy to understand. You can actually go in and read the source code for Enyo and get a good feel for what's going on with it. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, also going back to the simple text question, I'm trying to figure out where to space this. Like in the space of all these different frameworks and libraries are targeting different things. So, as you said, I didn't see like the data binding for Ajax calls and that type of thing. So I would put this in to something like Ember or Backbone, similar to that. That might be something perhaps like Twitter Bootstrap. Is this more the UI component that might fit into that stack? Is there templating? This also, or?
We don't provide a templating engine at this time, and we don't provide a data binding, although we're doing some work on a data binding layer that will probably work with Backbone. We've kept it very lightweight. It's very focused on UI and the framework of an application. Like I said, it plays nicely with those there's more data-centric frameworks out there. So
but basically, with something like Backbone with an MVC model, this is a very solid view model. It sounds like very strong UI controls in that space. Okay, perfect.
yes, yes. Okay. Got another one?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the presentation, but is this a company or an initiative for developers?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Enyo is being funded. Development is being funded by HP. So it's a open source project which is available to anyone out in the community. HP is funding this. They use this internally for their own enterprise app development. So yeah, it's backed by a company, but
Is there a business model behind it or not?
There are some announcements that are coming soon, but Enyo will always be free. It's not HP is not directly monetizing Enyo. HP can use Enyo internally for developing apps for clients, so they can make money that way. There are a lot of HP services which mesh very nicely with Enyo. HP has a number of cloud offerings, and PCs and servers and things that anybody who's deploying apps will need. And so stay tuned. Yes.
Are there any like high profile apps that come out yet?
We just came out of beta about 3 or 4 months ago, I guess.
Okay.
We got 1.0 out the door. I guess it was 3 or 4 months ago, and then we got 1.1 out just a little bit ago, or 1.01. We do have some pretty good success stories so far. One of them, I was just down in Norfolk with a company called Xtuple, and they are an open source ERP provider, and they had been developing a web-based interface using a derivative of Sprout Core, and they were showing that off at the Fluent conference out in California. And we met with them, and they're like, "Look, we got this wonderful thing that we put together with JavaScript." And we said, "Well, did you look at Enyo at all before you did that?" And they're like, "Well, we don't know what that is." And so we showed them, and they said, "Oh, wow, this is so much cleaner and better than what we've got." They scrapped everything that they'd done in Sprout Core. It was almost ready for deployment, and they rewrote it all in Enyo. I was down there, and they are just launching their web client that was done in Enyo, and it's very nice. So definitely we've got a number of companies working on some good apps with Enyo.
Since you're targeting cross-platform, is there any like plans now or in the future to help with differences between devices, like in terms of functionality? Not necessarily like I know like you probably defer to PhoneGap for the stuff on the phone, but just for usability, like there's a home button on an Android or a back button, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I know we've put a lot of thought into that. And I don't know exactly what we're doing to enhance that. I wonder if Jeremy's in here. Is he? I don't see him.
I don't think
Jeremy's more of a core developer than I am. I'm in the developer relations team, and I do very little commits to the code, and he does a lot. So he could talk to that more directly. But I know that devices do have different modes for interaction, and to the extent that we can, we try and make that clean. Anyone else? Go ahead, ask another one.
Sorry, because I missed the first part. I want to ask you two questions. How does the communication between the app and the back end happen?
However you want it to happen. You know, we have built-in AJAX parts that you can use for getting data from whatever back end. I mean, it's a full app. It's a full app. Self-contained app. When you develop an app, the only part you would need to reach out to a backend for is if you're doing data-intensive applications or fetching images, things like that.
So it's mainly JSON, I guess, is the main
Sure, you could use that. Absolutely. Just to drop back a little bit, the company that Xtuple that developed their app, what they have done is they took AngularJS with Backbone and Backbone Relational on the client side. On the back end, they've got a Node server with code that works with their business rules that communicates to Postgres, pulling JSON. The newest version of Postgres has PostgreSQL has capabilities to send and receive JSON, and so they've got stored procedures that are in JavaScript on Postgres, communicating with the Node server and all the way back up. And they tell me that the JavaScript app is actually faster than their Qt app, desktop app, in many, especially in responsiveness. Oh, keep asking. Go ahead.
What about support for BlackBerry and Windows Phone 8?
Good question. Windows Phone 8, definitely. Windows Phone 7, we really couldn't do much with it. It's missing touch events entirely. Enya is very much a touch enabled framework. So some things work okay, some things don't. Windows Phone 8, we're still evaluating that, where it's going to be a Tier 1 or a Tier 2. 7.5 is currently Tier 2 or 3. I wish I could bring that up right now. Maybe I can tether and get that in here. And I can show you the full tier. I showed the Tier 1, but you can go to angularjs.com and get the list of supported platforms. BlackBerry Playbook works flawlessly with it. It's not Tier 1 just because there's not the demand for it that we put it into the development rotation, but their browser is extremely good, and so everything just pretty much works flawlessly in BlackBerry. It is a Tier 2 for the BlackBerry 6.5 up or something like that. Okay. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.